Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to session TA 6.02 from the UN World Data Forum, supporting better investments in development data, mechanisms, actions, and perspective. This event is co-organized by Paris 21 and the OECD in close cooperation with key partners from the Bern Network on financing for development data. I will say a few words about the Bern Network in a minute, but let me just introduce myself. My name is Johannes Jutting. I'm the executive head of Paris 21, and I'm really delighted that you take the time to join us this afternoon, this morning, this evening, in this very important session. I'm also delighted to co-moderate the session with my colleague and friend Shaida Badi from Open Data Watch, to whom I would like to give the floor right now so she can introduce also herself. Shaida?
Thank you, Johannes, and a very warm welcome from me to all the audience for joining this exciting session. I'm Shaida Badi from Open Data Watch, and been working with the core team of the Bern Network and the Secretariat at Paris 21 for the past few months, and really excited to be presenting some of the work that we have done and also the direction we're taking for this important initiative.
Thank you, Shaida. You may ask yourself, why a session on funding, and why a session on funding in the UN World Data Forum? Maybe some of you have had the opportunity to zoom into other sessions. I had the opportunity just to review a couple of sessions from the first and the second day. This is the third day. We are coming close to the end. And I think you have seen how many exciting ideas have been presented. Just to name a very few: geospatial data for the public good, administrative data systems for CRVS, and investing in gender data to better help design recovery policies that can be directed directly to vulnerable people and women and children at all. So lots of interesting ideas, lots of good ideas that we have heard about. I also think this is very important to talk about how could they be funded. How is actually the funding going on for development data? And as you know, over the last years with the OECD and Paris 21, we have been tracking funding flows. And unfortunately, the overall funding amount for data and statistics for development data is still below 1% of ODA. So the overall amount is still hovering around $600 million US. So not so much. So in 2019, a like-minded group of institutions and individual people got together under the umbrella of the Bern Network. The Bern Network is an informal gathering of development practitioners, people working on more development aid and cooperation, but also on data and statistics. And this group was trying, and is trying since 2019, to move this agenda forward, to think of how can we get more and better funding for development data. And it has been a wonderful success. It has been a wonderful journey until this point today. And a little bit the idea is to take stock today, what have we achieved, but also then to map out a way forward, and also to present to you one very exciting idea, which we will show to you in a minute, the clearinghouse on financing development data. But let me give the floor now to Shaida Badi so she can introduce a bit more what the Bern Network is working on and what are the key items the Bern Network has made already some good progress. Shaida?
Yeah, so as Johannes said, we've been hard at work on consultations and working with the various members of the Bern Network to see what is it. This is a very challenging but also a timely initiative. But what are the areas that we can really focus on? We have picked 5 areas. Sorry for, it's really 5, not 2 4s. But one of the first things that is really a key focus for us is mobilizing more domestic resources, with the hope that eventually countries and more countries will be financing the development of statistics domestically versus external funding. The second thing is we still need to scale up funding. We want to see how we can gauge interest of the donors and also the the custodian agencies and other development agencies to see how we can keep their interest in funding data and statistics. The third thing is we want to boost efficiency of aid. There are a number of areas that many of you know that we need to do better, to maybe cut down some of the waste that we have building multiple, parallel systems and, like versus official statistics and monitoring and evaluation. So we need to do much better on the efficiency of aid. And strengthening collaboration is a very important part of our coordination and collaboration. And that's one of the areas that we're going to be focusing today in discussions with you and sharing some of the advancements we've made. And finally, the last but not least is leveraging sectoral funds. We see that more and more donors are interested in funding special sectors, and some of them even interested in subsectors, in a very specific items in a sector. So how can we connect these fundings and make, leverage them to make better of the investments in data and statistics? So going forward, we want to, we have a lot of work ahead of us, but we want to share some of this work that we have done going forward. Over to you, Johannes.
Well, thanks, Shaida. I think we stand also on firm grounds. This work, I mean, this is the third UN World Data Forum. The first one was in 2016 in Cape Town, then in Dubai 2018, and now we have 2020. And we have the Cape Town Action Plan, we have the Dubai Declaration on Funding. And I think this time, this Bern virtual forum and next year a real forum, we have really achieved quite a lot in thinking about better financing for development data. So this session has three objectives. One is to really share perspectives, and we will, in a minute, we will hear from two keynote speakers. They will present us with their views on where do we stand, also in context of the overall discussion in development, SDGs, and the link to the overall development and the COVID agenda. Second, the idea is that we share with you one exciting example, the clearinghouse that I already mentioned. And third, we will have a wonderful panel to go more into detail and to listen from very different perspectives on this topic. So with this, let me just only say one word of thanks here. It's the Bern Network. It's the Bern Network because it was originated in Bern, but also thank you, Switzerland, for giving us some seed money for this group. Otherwise, we wouldn't probably be sitting here. So this is greatly appreciated. With this, back to Shaida for kicking off the first segment of the session, the introduction of our two imminent keynote speakers. Shaida?
Yes, in this segment, which is going to be 10 minutes and 5 minutes each for two of our really keynote speakers, and bringing a perspective from very, very important communities that we're working with on the government side and on the donor side. The two keynote speakers are Zaya Ayush. Ayush has many roles for us in the development and development data community. She is currently a member of the cabinet of the government and minister for the labor and social protections of Mongolia. And as many of you who are tuned in know her, she's coming to us from a previous role as the head of the statistics of Mongolia, and she's been very much involved in the global statistical work. And then we will hear from George Moreira da Silva, and George is the Director of Development Cooperation Directorate at OECD, and very much involved for years that I have known him, very much involved in the data agenda and really pursuing the data agenda within the DAC and OECD. So let's start with you, dear Ayush. Let me remind you again, we have 5 minutes for you each. This session could be just with the two of you for 75 minutes, but we really have only 10 minutes. So we're going to use Johannes's cards for alerting you of your timing. Starting with you, Ayush, now.
Thank you so much, Aida, for giving me the floor. I'm so glad to see you. All. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with you all virtually to talk about the importance of investing in development data. We are all aware that the data is critical for achieving sustainable development, not as an end in itself, but as a means to an end, which is better lives for all. Few of us need to be reminded that with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, we as an international community adopted an ambitious set of goals that require informed choices about priorities and strategies and a way to track progress. For this, we need not only good data, but more of it. Better policies are built on high quality and timely and disaggregated data, and they enable us to save lives, build more inclusive societies, and set out on the path to robust economic recovery. So we must all embark upon as we look to the post-pandemic world. The COVID-19 crisis has increased this demand, of course, in all countries. It has brought data to public attention as policymakers all over the world realized that health data is not enough for recovery policies. It has become urgent to fill the gaps of missing data. So in this context, we need national statistical systems to deliver on this demand for more, the demand for more data. We need it for sustainability, for recovery and resilience. We need significant and stable investment, which brings us to the topic of today's session, the investment into development data. So in the pre-COVID-19 period, the international community recognized the need for more and better funding, better coordination for the data and statistics, so that financing was not at the level required to allow policymakers to track progress, even for 2030 agenda. So both previous outcomes of World Data Forums, such as Cape Town Global Action Plan and Dubai Declaration, highlighted this recognition. In them, we set out a roadmap to modernize national statistical systems so they can fit for the purpose for our sustainable development goals. We also called for increased financing for development data, locally, nationally, and also regionally. So we must all work together to make these statements a reality, even more today. So data and statistics continue to be under-resourced, and the challenge has taken an additional dimension with COVID-19. It is not news for many of us that national statistical offices are facing considerable pressures when all governments are cutting their budgets due to COVID-19 crisis. So just as there is more demand for the data now to support pandemic responses and recovery, there is less ability to provide it because of the impact of COVID-19. NSOs around the world are facing the constraints on the activities and also face resource shortfalls. This places even more importance on the potential solutions we can find out to make financing for development data not only greater, but also better. So the way to do that, my belief is that enhancing multi-stakeholder action is imperative. Through such action, we can mobilize more domestic and international funding. Of course, activating partnerships, improving our knowledge of the challenges and potential solutions at hand, and better identifying opportunities to strengthen the capacity of national statistical systems in themselves. So we can do this by recognizing what we have actually complementary but different roles in this collective landscape, and progress will be mutually reinforcing. So that is why Mongolia is also proud to be a member of the Bern Network, which focuses on exactly this type of multi-stakeholder dialogue to promote cooperation and action to improve financing for development data. We need really better coordination and better partnerships. So we do support the Bern Network's approach to change through the 5 action areas that seek to drive progress in a holistic way, which will be presented in today's session. We will give an example of what we can achieve together through such collaboration. In this context, I am especially excited about the new mechanism of Bern Network, which is developing to support better decision makings for investments and development data. And we will hear about it now shortly. So Mongolia is fully supporting the new platform and very looking forward to be a user of it, and the value it can bring to this community. So very much looking forward for the discussion today. I thank you. That is all from my side.
Thank you, Ayush, and thanks for encouraging words and the statement of support from you. We really appreciate it, and Mongolia is lucky to have you in your position. Over to you, George, for 5 minutes, high-level notes. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaida. Thank you, Johannes. We are very pleased that OECD is part of this discussion, and I'm delighted that we are also active in the Bern Network to promote sustainable financing for more and better data. We all know that due to COVID, we risk to losing decades of development progress. Recent data from OECD is highlighting the fact that already this year, 2020, we will see a 700 billion drop of external finance to developing countries. That's why protecting ODA is fundamental. ODA remains critical for developing country partners as the most stable source of external public finance, especially at the time when inflows from foreign direct investment and remittances are falling. And that's why the OECD has called on the DAC to maintain and to extent possible step up ODA, to which a number of members have committed. So these are encouraging news. We need strong political will to achieve this goal for action. At the same time, and Ayush already mentioned this point, we need to invest more on ODA to strengthen underfunded and stretched national data systems. Systems that need to catch up with the data and digital revolution. This was true before COVID, now it's even more compelling. COVID-19 has brought data and statistics to the center of policy making and policy and public attention. Data on the spread of infections and the human losses have been crucial to mounting an effective response to the pandemic. They have helped governments and citizens to align on the difficult decisions taken at the national, but also at the international level. Yet, COVID-19 has also further exposed the intolerable divide between countries in the availability of good data. Today, significant data gaps and limited statistical capacity are making it harder for developing countries to design, develop, and deliver efficient and informed responses to the crisis, and also to build future resilience. Information on the social and economic aspects of the crisis, such as unemployment, income, human needs, is scattered and not very timely. Moreover, as many of you know, only half of the deaths that occur worldwide are registered with information on the cause of the death. 81 countries either do not register death at all or have serious data quality issues. There are so many global benefits of well-functioning civil registration and vital statistical systems. They help policymakers understand the impact of health crisis and consequently deliver the most effective policy response. The benefits extend far beyond having accurate and timely population statistics. We know that birth registrations, a fundamental human right, is often instrumental for the exercise of other rights, such as participation in the political process and accessing to education, healthcare, social protection, and other public services. Yet, countries, especially LDCs and other low-income countries, still struggle to build these systems without support from international development cooperation. And that's why the role of development cooperation is crucial. This is why building strong modern national statistics is vital. And this is why it is so important to come together to build a coordination mechanisms that meet countries' needs, help build synergies, and reduce ineffective duplication. At OECD, we promote high standards, as you know, and norms in development cooperation. We work together with our colleagues from Paris 21. Our ongoing work on data for development is committed to identify and promote better policies, better practices, and support for development data. 3 years ago, some of you remember, we have partnered also with Shaida on this. We launched our development cooperation report on data for development, where we call for an increase in the quality and quantity of international financing for data to boost statistical capacity and data literacy through approaches. To conclude, the OECD will continue to champion better international strategies, policies, and financing for core statistics and data for development. We work closely with member states of the OECD, members of the DAC, our friends and partners at Paris 21 and other key actors such as Open Data Watch. We all know that we must do our part to help ensure that every person is counted and counts, and that policymakers are armed with reliable data for healthier, safer, and longer lives for all. Thank you.
And thank you, George, and thanks for reminding us of all the good work that's been done by DAC and yourself in pursuing putting the data and the critical nature of data, particularly now with COVID-19 at the center of the attention for DAC members. Thank you. Now we would move to the next segment of our session today, and that is to give you a sort of a flavor of the clearinghouse. This is one of the items that, as I mentioned, we've been working on, and in fact, it meets more than one of the actions that I presented to you. And to present this work, I'm going to give the floor to Jorai Yada. She's the Bern Network Coordination Lead, which is at Paris 21, of course. And Jorai is going to kind of give us an overview of where we are on the clearinghouse, and and where we're going with it. Over to you, Jorai.
Thank you, Shaida, and good afternoon to everyone. I am extremely pleased to be introducing the Clearinghouse in this segment of the event today, in particular, since it's the first time we will be sharing a lot of the content on this project to the public beyond the members of the Bern Network. So this is a project, as Shaida and Johannes said earlier, that has been under development for several months now in the network. And over this period of time, we've conducted a range of consultations with partners and potential users, getting a sense of the needs the platform can respond to. And we've also run global surveys and done conceptual and technical work to design the platform that I will present to you in the coming slides. So without further ado, I'd like to start by sharing a video, which we are premiering in a way in this session, to give you an overview of what the Clearinghouse is about and how it can make a difference for financing data.
We all need accurate, disaggregated data to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and leave no one behind. But many countries still lack the means to produce and use high-quality data. They need more support. In 2018, global aid for data was only half of what is needed. The COVID-19 pandemic has further threatened progress in data. How can we both increase funding and make it more efficient? Introducing the Clearinghouse for Financing Development Data, the world's first online platform for matching supply and demand of financing for statistics. It provides close to real-time information on aid flows and domestic support to statistics, as well as country demand. This helps to target aid more effectively and strengthen coordination among donors and partners. So, how does it work? This is Amir. Amir is helping his ministry budget for SDG monitoring. Thanks to the Clearinghouse, he sees how much aid his country gets and from whom for things like household surveys and censuses. He can also learn how his country's statistical plan matches up against existing funding and international good practices, and how other countries raise and maintain funding for statistics. This is Alice. Alice is writing a project proposal to invest in gender data in Latin America. Using the Clearinghouse, she can quickly see what other donors are funding to build partnerships or access best practices, and identify potential funding opportunities with the biggest impact on women and men in sectors such as health, education, economic livelihoods, or COVID-19. She can also see what other donors are funding to identify potential partnerships or access best practices. The Clearinghouse is being developed by the Bern Network, a global alliance to enhance financing for development data. We invite all members of the development and data communities to support the development of the Clearinghouse and help us put data at the heart of the Sustainable Development Goals. By making financing smarter, we can ensure that every dollar for statistical capacity goes further and leaves no one behind.
So I hope you enjoyed that animated introduction to the Clearinghouse. And just to pick up and highlight a few points from what we just heard in the video, the purpose of the Clearinghouse is very much to achieve change by providing timely information to better match the demand for and supply of statistical support. And it will do so by drawing on existing data sources from Paris 21, as well as open data sources and also analyses from partners to provide the functionalities you heard about just now, which include visualizations of funding flows and funding gaps in near real time, nowcasting and forecasting of what activities and projects are underway in specific countries or will require funding in the future, an overview of country and donor profiles, as well as providing a space for good practice exchanges and also a repository of key resources to help advocate and really make the case for funding data. And what all this is intended to do is to respond to a number of challenges that we identified together with key members of the data and development communities as being the main obstacles to more and better funding for data. Namely, the need for greater coordination in what is currently a somewhat fragmented funding landscape for data, easier access to information that is decision relevant, which really came up in a global survey we ran as a key challenge for many respondents in the data as well as the development communities, and also building stronger business cases for investing in data. And of course, all this is intended to have the impact of helping align the demand and the availability of support for data, as well as to facilitate better coordination and alignment of priorities, with the ultimate goal, of course, to get to more and better funding for development data. I would like to add here that the Clearinghouse is being designed very much as a resource for all types of users, from national statistical offices to aid providers, as well as NGOs and other international organizations. So it's meant to be a resource that can be widely used by everyone. Now, what will all of this actually look like in practice in the Clearinghouse? We have prepared for you a set of visual mock-ups of the platform that we will be sharing with you for the very first time here to give you a practical sense of what will it be like to use the Clearinghouse. And before I put them on the screen, I did want to flag that the data you will be seeing in the mock-ups are just indicative, so they are not real. So please bear that in mind as you consider the visuals that I will screen shortly. And of course, the format of these mock-ups may evolve as we work further with our partners on designing the platform. So if I may just change screens. So here we are. This is the landing page for the Clearinghouse for Financing Development Data, where as a user, I can easily find and access different categories of information, from support under funding flows to demand under funding opportunities, as well as finding information on partners, and also key resources. And I can go into greater levels of detail on any of these categories, for example, looking at information at country level or by policy area and region by using the filters available on the website. So let me walk you through a few concrete examples. Now, if I were a user looking to understand broad trends in data financing, I can click up here on the Track Funding Flows button to access this global overview of near real-time data on financing flows. And here I can also scroll down to look at the temporal trends in funding for data over certain time periods, as well as consult trends by policy area, for example, health or gender. And from here, I can also click on any of the points in the map to dig deeper, like I said earlier, at the regional or country level. So to give you an illustration, if I wanted to know what's happening regionally, it's in sub-Saharan Africa, I can click on the map to access this dedicated page, where I can easily see a breakdown of the amount of funding for data and statistics in the region by source of funding. So for example, bilateral or domestic, as well as by policy area. So if I were Alice from the video we just heard and I'm interested in gender, I can easily see and find information on how much funding is going into gender data in this region by consulting this table and looking at the bar on the far left under gender equality. Now, if I were more interested in identifying potential partners, I can also find this information by scrolling down here to get a look at what kind of major donors are operating in this region, so I can reach out to them for potential collaboration. I can also better understand what types of activities I may want to invest in by looking at this box here on funding by statistical activity. So you can see that there's a range of information that will be available on these pages, and they will also be available for the country level too, as I just mentioned. So for example, here we see Rwanda, and you can find the same categories of information I just presented for sub-Saharan Africa here. So I will not go into much more detail on this. Now, of course, the clearinghouse will also offer a view on the demand side. So here we see an example of a page under the Discovering Funding Opportunities tab. So going back to the video again, if I were Amir working on SDG monitoring for my government, I can go to this page to very easily see and check the extent to which my country's statistical plans are being funded by looking at the traffic lights at the top here, which show me the funding status of my government's different statistical strategies. I can also get a sense of what activities are being planned in country by looking at this box here, which can be very useful if I wanted to understand the future needs, activity needs and funding needs, and also to identify opportunities for funding and or partnership, for example, if I were an aid provider. And what's also interesting on the demand side page is to get a sense of the government's data policy priorities. Now, if you can have a look at the colorful box here at the bottom, this shows how many times key policy area keywords are used in the government's strategic documents. So we have climate, for example, as well as gender, education. So a user can easily click on any of these boxes to see what the government is doing with respect to that policy area. Now, the platform will, of course, also offer profiles on different partners and different organizations, which a user can use to zoom in and get a sense of what this partner is doing in terms of specific projects, as well as what geographic areas it's operating in under the country supported, and also get a sense of the funding involved. And you can go one level deeper also by filtering thematically. So for example, if I wanted to get a better sense of a gender project in sub-Saharan Africa, I can click on this kind of page and see what kind of partners are operating here on this project. And I can use the in-house messaging function of the clearinghouse to reach out to any of these partners and also get more information on their specific project, or maybe even explore a partnership if I wish to do that. Finally, and not least, a user of the clearinghouse will also be able to access this page on key resources, where we will be looking very much to put resources not only from the analytical group and the core group of the Bern Network, but also from the different users using this platform to help, for example, build a more compelling case for investing in data and statistics. So I hope this gives you a really good overview of what we have in mind and what you'll be able to find on this clearinghouse. I will stop my presentation here and hand the floor to Johannes to walk us through the next steps for the platform.
Well, thank you so much, Jerai. This was really impressive. Lots of things to digest. So we got a couple of questions already in the chat. So the video and the slides will be made available through the website of the Bern Network. There is an own standing website of the Bern Network, and there will be, of course, also tweeting and links to the partners website. So if you want to see the video again, and if you want to have another look at the mock-ups, please, you're just invited to join those sites and to look at it again. I should say here, these are, as Jerai was saying, this was basically a teaser. We start to develop it, and we would really appreciate all of your support. We need technical support, we need advocacy support, we need funding support. So just let me close this part by saying and showing the timeline that we have in mind. So we had to postpone, our Swiss colleagues and the UN had to postpone the physical forum to next year, which will be in October 2021, which had the advantage that we have 1 year more to develop this clearinghouse. So in terms of next steps is really to develop the next steps over the next couple of months with the presentation of a prototype at the next UN high-level meeting at the HLG forum in July in New York, and then to have an operational launch in October in a year's time. So it's really, if you want to engage, please get in touch with us, and we are very happy to get your ideas. With this, I would suggest, with your permission, because time is running on, we move to the last segment or before last segment of this session, to our exciting panel conversation. So for the panel conversation, we want to broaden our perspectives again. We started broadly with setting the context on more and better funding, where we come from. We zoomed into the clearinghouse, and now we broaden again. And we have 6 wonderful panelists, amazing panelists, who will all provide us a different perspective on the same question that I will read out in a minute. So the same question for everybody, but very different perspectives. As you will see in a minute, the panelists come from very different backgrounds and are living in very different parts of this world. So let me introduce them just one by one. We have first Ms. Ola Abbott, President of the Central Bureau of Statistics. Ola, it's good to have you here. I see you there. Wonderful to have you with us. Next in line, we have Mr. Dominique Boursier. He's the Deputy Director of Global Affairs Canada. Thank you so much, Dominique, for joining us. We have Ms. Ansi Hassanali, Senior Statistician at the Swedish International Development Agency, SIDA. Thank you so much for joining us. Then we have a good colleague and friend of mine, George Simon Ulrich, Director General of the Swiss Federal Statistical Office. Good to see you, George. Followed by Ms. Andrea Richter-Jung, Deputy Director, Statistics Department of the International Monetary Fund. Hello, Andrea. And then we have Ms. Diva Dar, Senior Program Officer working on gender data from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So these are our amazing panelists. So the question to all of them is to kindly give us, in your view, and I will start then with Ola. In your view, Ola, can you name us one central challenge for more and better funding for data, one central challenge, and one idea for a possible solution? So one challenge, or 1 or 2 challenges, and 1 or 2 solutions, all in 2 minutes. So Ola, the floor is yours.
You make it hard. Thank you, Johannes. And before I start, I want to congratulate you for this really impressive session. And I want to congratulate George for the success of the UN World Data Forum, and also for the UNSD's success in organizing this. I miss you all, actually. Shaida, Ayush, we're happy that you are with us. Coming to the topic, maybe from our experience, because you just asked for one challenge, one main challenge, I may say it's a weak mobilization of resources and scattered funding. So we have such a weak coordination of domestic, of national and international funds regarding to statistics. We have a lack of synergy. We have scattered programs of funding for the same domain is often a problem. For donors, a challenge for us that statistics is a cross-cutting issue. So it's not a sector by itself. So it's not actually put on the donor chapter as a chapter for statistics. And this is really also brings a main challenge. For the solution, I can come to the challenge itself. It's really important to have a platform, a fund platform on the national level and on the international level for the support of statistics, for the support of the capacity development of statistics, especially now we have such a huge demand on data after the endorsement of the SDGs. And now we are in the corner edge of developing and modernization of statistics and NSOs. So it's really important to have a kind of a funding platform on the national level inside the country and also on the international level. This is from my perspective. We have in Palestine, we established a core funding, a group on the national level. It's working pretty well, but it's really important to have it on the national and international level. And I'll be glad to talk a bit more if I got more time to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ola. And thank you also for making the link to the current squeeze of national statistical offices. I think with the COVID crisis, we have seen this squeeze. On the one hand, data is demanded from you, timely, granular data to help government, to help your government with dealing with the COVID crisis. On the other hand, you can't go out. I mean, you can't do it because of lockdowns and because of all the constraints. So it's a particularly challenging time, and the funding and provision of funding at this time for quality data is very important, which brings me directly to Dominic. Dominic, you are a representative from an important donor country, from Canada. Canada is very engaged in development cooperation and is also playing a leading role in Paris 21 and in other fora. So Dominic, what's your perspective on this topic?
Well, thank you, Johannes, for inviting me to the panel. And as you just mentioned, for Canada, the importance of robust data collection and statistical capacity is at the heart of our international statistics policy framework, which emphasizes strengthened data and statistical systems for evidence-based policymaking and promotes the use of gender disaggregated data. So when we talk about approaches for financing for development data, it's important not to look only at how much we are funding, but also what we are funding. A fundamental principle of Agenda 2030 is to leave no one behind. A lot of panelists have alluded to this. So in order to leave no one behind, everyone must count and everyone must be counted. So bridging that data divide is vital. When data is insufficient or missing, the most vulnerable and marginalized people, including women and girls, risk becoming invisible. And that problem and insufficient gender disaggregated data is compounded by a lack of follow-up to address the problem that this data reveal. When confronted with significant inequalities between men and women, governments should be taking steps to ensure that their policy making and resource allocation are designed to minimize it and eventually overcome such disparities. So in terms of potential solution, we recognize that national statistical systems and national statistical offices are instrumental in assisting countries to plan, implement, and monitor progress towards achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. So we need to strengthen their capacity to collect and use quality, timely, and disaggregated data to ensure that no one is left behind, including women and girls, as we all work towards achieving the goals of the 2030 agenda. One thing that donor can do is to develop advocacy campaigns linked to their support for strengthening data collection and statistical capacity. So this advocacy can highlight to recipient government the significance of the data and the importance to inform policy decision and resource allocation to support improved national development outcomes. I'll stop now for the sake of time, but happy to discuss further later.
Thank you very much, Dominic, and also for bringing in this specific perspective on supporting, in particular, gender statistics and gender data. Let me now move to ANSI. I mean, we also at Paris 21 work very closely with Sweden. We have actually a wonderful tripart cooperation with Statistics Sweden and CEDA, in particular also to strengthen statistical systems in Africa. Ansi, I'm very interested in your perspective on this topic. So on more and better funding for development data.
Thank you, Johannes, and really great to be part of the panel today. I think I will highlight three specific points in relation to this topic. And one thing is around the issues that the efforts are fragmented within data and statistics, because it's targeted to specific sectors, gender, health. A holistic perspective of data and statistics is missing, which needs, more collaborations in integrating the capacity of national statistical institutes to reduce these fragmentations. The other important aspect that I want to highlight is the advocacy for the importance of development data and how we need to change the perception and attitudes of society in general that, statistics and data is undeniably part of the solution. If you just look at any example, you look at very specific project, how much money is often dedicated to monitoring and evaluation of the project. It is a lot of times seen as an add-on. So we need to change this course of actions that how statistics can help benefit the development community. One potential solution would be to share these best practices on how the data and statistics use has helped development community to change their course of actions. It will be beneficial for both the national government, the national statistical institutes to actually see it in practice and apply those practices. The other, we have to be on top of the development effectiveness agenda, adhere to those principles. And that is where we, the importance of domestic resource mobilization and how important the country ownership is to ensure the sustainability of all of this. So I think that's not just the actors coming together, but also the horizontal collaboration of different line ministries and national statistical institutes coming together, to form that basis. And I think I would like to end on one note that when we talk about data and statistics, it's not about generally giving and receiving. It's the inherent mindset that needs to be integrated in the development agenda from the beginning, so that it's not seen as an add-on, but seen as a perspective in its own domain. So I think I would end with that note. Thank you.
Thank you, Ansi. Those are really great, and the ending is amazing. That this is really, it's not a technical issue we're talking about. It's really a development issue, building statistical capacity. So let's move now to George with the same question that Johannes articulated on telling us one challenge and one solution. George, over to you.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much being here and have a chat with you to this topic. I think it's a very important topic, and we know since years a very close collaboration between the statistical office that I had in the Swiss 8 and the Swiss 8 agencies. This was the most important precondition to launch the Bern Network with many who are joining me on the panel here, like Open Data Watch, Paris 21, the UNSD, and of course also the OECD. So we needed the Bern Network because it's recognized that the multi-stakeholder approach is critical to improve the amount and effectiveness of financing for data and statistics for development. So it's great to have such a dispersed panel and to see what the clearinghouse, so how far the network has come since it was created in January 2019. So regarding the question raised, I would like to share the perspective from a global level, drawing the HLGP CCB that Switzerland is a member of. This group has long called for a country-driven mechanism to improve coordination, which is a central challenge for more and better funding for data. In this context, the Clearinghouse presents a practical way forward and one we can all engage to drive forward the implementation of the Cape Town Global Action Plan by addressing information gaps, which Switzerland sees as an important solution. In pandemic times, when data is more critical than ever, but resources are stretched, better matching of supply and demand will be important to achieve. So we hope that the 5 actions discussed and the development by Bern Network's members and today's discussed clearinghouse will bring us to the next level. It's great to see that a concrete outcome at the UN World Data Forum next year in Switzerland would be a result out of that.
Thank you, George. And of course, we're all looking forward, particularly with this agenda, to the in-person or maybe hybrid version of the UN World Data Forum next year in Bern. So let me turn to you, Andrea. We're really happy to have IMF and yourself present in this discussion. So same question to you, Andrea.
Thank you, Shaida. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share some thoughts from the IMF's perspective. I mean, for our institution, timely and high quality economic and financial data are critical inputs for policymakers. And so supporting CD and statistics is a very important activity for the IMF, and it complements very well our activities in surveillance and in lending. As we've heard today, it's abundantly clear that more resources are needed to support data and statistics work. But we know that the outlook for financing is quite challenging. And so from our side, we think it's very important that the resources that we do have can be as impactful as possible. And so let me share 2 points in that regard, and I'll give you some what we mean by that. First, we think it's very important that there's greater flexibility in how donor resources can be used so that we can deploy the resources to where the need is greatest. And the second point is that better information sharing helps reduce duplication and increases complementarities across CD efforts, which allows us to stretch our resources further. And this is exactly, I think, the point of the clearinghouse. So on the first point, we've actually had a very important evolution in how the IMF statistics CD is financed. And this already started before COVID was even on our radar screen. What has happened is we've had this gradual shift from bilaterally funded projects, which are focused on a small group of countries, to multi-donor trust funds, which are focused on a larger group of countries. So now our flagship funding vehicle is the Data for Decisions Fund, which was launched 2 years ago with contributions of about $33 million over 5 years. So, you know, the IMF is not a major player in statistics CD, but we do sort of try to make the most out of the resources we have. And the flexibility that we have under D4D has proved incredibly valuable for meeting country needs during the pandemic period. So let me give you some examples. You know, demand for traditional project-based CD has declined, you know, which is not surprising given the limited bandwidth that our counterparts have to handle longer-term projects at this time. And instead, countries have been requesting new forms of CD. So let me give you 2 examples. First, countries have been asking us for what we call ad hoc advisory services to help with urgent business continuity challenges. And since March, we've provided over 600 such engagements on topics like alternative data sources when the traditional ones are no longer available, and also on how to record COVID-19 fiscal stimulus packages to ensure fiscal transparency. I mean, you may have heard our MD talking about, you know, by all means, go out and spend to support economies at this time, but keep the receipts. So that's where fiscal transparency is very important. Second, many of our countries have asked for more online training. And here again, D4D has funded a comprehensive online statistics curriculum. And we've seen a significant increase in participation from country authorities in these online programs. We're also tailoring them now to be more modular, to be in line with sort of absorption capacity at the authority level. We're also doing a lot of smaller webinars, again, to meet more urgent needs. The second point is, you know, how could we further increase the impact of our CD resources? And here, this is a well-trodden theme for today, increased coordination and collaboration between CD providers. When we think about country coverage, better coordination can help us avoid funding orphans, countries that somehow fall through the cracks and are not getting the support that they need. But they can also help us avoid funding overload, where some countries are just inundated with projects and supply, you know, support from many different countries, which they are just not in a position to efficiently absorb. And so better coordination can increase the synergies between work programs. And here for us, you know, in the recent period, we've really tried to put more effort into enhancing our collaboration with the World Bank. As you may know, the bank has a new data for policy initiative. which aims to enhance the availability, timeliness, quality of key data for evidence-based decision-making. And so at the fund, we're exploring, which of those projects are best placed to develop the source data that we at the fund need to support our assistance on macroeconomic statistics. So we see a lot of potential there, and that's where we have the Clearinghouse playing a very important role. I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andrea, and thanks for the points you made on how to best use the current resources, and also elaboration on being aware of the changing nature of the demand side. I'm glad to hear that the D4D is collaborating with D4P between the World Bank and IMF. That's really super. And yes, Clearinghouse is going to really help with that elements of coordination. Thank you. Now going to Diva. Diva, last but not least, hearing from you and from your very important perspective from a donor from the philanthropical side. Diva, over to you.
Thanks, Shada. Thanks for having me here today. I'm going to speak very specifically from a gender lens, or from the sectoral lens of gender, which is one of the core areas of work for the Foundation's gender equality team, to ensure the production of timely, high quality and reliable gender data, echoing many of what others have said today. Shaida, as your own research shows with Open Data Watch and Data2X, the gap in financing for gender data actually ranges from $170 to $240 million, which is a large number. And this is in fact a no frills estimate, a number what that would be required for just a core gender data system. So while philanthropic capital from foundations such as ours and greater donor alignment can help make a dent, I echo others in suggesting that increased resource domestic mobilization from governments is going to be crucial to help fill that financing gap. Panelists such as Anzi today have talked about the need for compelling use cases, and to that I'm going to add there's also a need for stronger demonstration models. So that's one of the first points that I wanted to highlight today. Partners such as Data2X for gender are building some of these stronger use cases for investing in measurement of areas such as women's time use and work. UN Women, through their flagship Women Count program, is helping build some of these demonstration models by providing support to countries on special gender surveys in areas such as time use and violence against women. This is to really help illustrate the value of collecting and using these data in countries which have, for example, not done this previously, and to point to the advantages of building a stronger gender data ecosystem. However, as many of you have said, the resource gap is only getting exacerbated during COVID for NSOs, and gender is one of those areas which is going to also face the consequences in terms of data gaps that are going to be worsened. So the other solution that I wanted to outline today is smarter and more effective financing to fill gender data gaps. This is something we're now exploring with partners such as the World Bank through a new pilot initiative along with their D4P, which Andrea just happened to also mention in her comments. The World Bank is going to be leveraging existing broader funding and financial resources from their lending projects to IDA countries to embed and integrate gender more intentionally in support to statistical systems. So the idea is to really tap into these broader opportunities, financing and technical support opportunities, and to layer gender more thoughtfully into existing activities, ranging from policy dialogue to technical support or light touch incentives, to actually ensure there are substantive changes in gender data. And I think these are the kinds of things that a clearinghouse can also help explore, where we are able to harness broader funding and projects to think about touching on various sectors and areas more thoughtfully and generating outsized returns for these investments. I'll pause there. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Diva, and thanks for emphasizing the importance of investment in gender data. Johannes, I was wondering if we can turn to you to see if we have time for one more round of questions.
I think we do. So please, panelists, get ready for one question. I will tell it to you now, and then I will try not to summarize, but just pick 2 points that I took away from the interesting conversation. So the question will be, more like an advice to the clearinghouse. What would be the one thing that you would like to see the clearinghouse does? It could be on content, could be on the way it's organized, could be on the process. So what is the one thing in 30 seconds, unfortunately we don't have much more, your advice for the next coming months? What should the people do? What would you do as partner of the clearinghouse? And what would you like to see in there? One thing. But before saying this, I mean, this was really a very nice, sharing of perspective. The topic of advocacy came up a couple of times, coordination, knowledge sharing. In advance of this conversation, we did with partners specific interviews with key people and experts, and some of them actually are among the panelists. And we also sent around a survey to a couple of thousands of people. And what I found really, to some extent, surprising was the feedback from partner countries. So from colleagues and friends in our partner countries, be it in Africa, Asia, Pacific, wherever, who said, listen, I mean, I'm a statistical office head, or I'm a planning person, working in the planning ministry. I'm interested, I'm convinced by your argument that I should invest in data, but I don't know, I mean, in terms of current, I don't have a good idea of how many programs currently there are, either from my own government, from my own administration, or from donors. So there are often so many programs and projects in parallel from international organizations, all well-intended on very specific issues. But for the person who has to make funding decisions, it's a little bit what Andrea and others have been saying, the coordination and the transparency is not very clear. It's often blurred, in particular, not only for people sitting in Washington, in New York, in Paris, and wherever, but in particular in our partner countries. So we really hope, and this brings me actually to Ola. I think that's also something, Ola, you mentioned, that even in Palestine, and making informed decision is not easy, and it's so difficult, even more difficult if you're under very tight budget constraints. So with this being said, can we turn very quickly back to all of you for one takeaway, one advice, one thing that we should put in this clearinghouse, or what would you like to put in the clearinghouse? And then we wrap it up and give the floor to Thomas Gass, who will conclude. Ola, back to you.
Thank you, Johannes. It's really hard, but I may mention that maybe if I'm talking about one advice, it's important to have this kind of one platform, one I may say one fund platform on the national and international level, a coordination, a strong coordination mechanism has to be done. Statistics has to be put as a chapter, within their funds. It's very important from my experience that collaboration between partners and between different players within funders' data ecosystem is really very much important. Thank you.
So next, Dominic.
Yeah, thanks, Johannes. I mean, as some speakers have said, like, resources are going to be in the environment that we are in right now. Resources are going to be scarce for data for development. So, to me, the role that the clearinghouse can play is to be a true vehicle for matching support and demand. So between the developing countries and the provider of development support, and to really make sure that we're fully optimizing like those scarce resources. In our experience in other similar clearinghouse, for instance, on tax capacity building, has demonstrated that this is a very efficient way to mobilize resources and ensure that they're used to the most efficient way. So yeah, it's a good idea in the current context. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Anzi.
I think I would echo what Dominique said in relation to domestic resource mobilization, and also, matching the gap. But I think one thing I would still emphasize on is even though we have the data and statistics, it's also to balance that the importance, I think the use of the data to build up the whole data ecosystem. So it's not about publishing, it's not about but actually practical examples of what has made a difference. How has that made a difference? Having those cases and sharing those experiences, I think that would be quite revolutionary in terms of looking at why is the need and what's important. So yeah, definitely balance the need, because there are resources are scarce. We need to match them with the others, but we also need to advance. It's not about just more funding, it's about better funding and actually showing that the funding is having an impact, and what are those impacts. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That was actually one of the requests by also partners, giving them stories that they could tell to their own governments for raising domestic resources. Very important point. So we have George next.
Thank you very much. I think this is exactly the point. I mean, we have 50 weeks left to create a product like the Clearinghouse. So we really have to do it. And then we have to talk about it. I think this is very important, so that when we are on our way, not only in the statistical community or in the place where we are, we should use it and present our business case at different events like the HLPF, UN General Assembly, and wherever you can talk about it. You should bring it in and say, this is an issue, talk about it, help us. And I think that is one of the most important things. Communication, telling the other people what we're doing, and then we really do it also.
Thank you very much. Andrea?
Thank you. So I think my feedback is maybe a little bit more operational and pragmatically focused, in the following sense that, let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good when we create sort of a platform, because these efforts to be successful need to be sustainable also in terms of the demands for information, the reporting requirements. And I think here there already is a lot of information that is being provided. So it's a matter of, I guess, leveraging what already exists to make sure that it's something that can provide value without being too much of an additional burden on sort of reporting entities. I think there's a lot to be mined already in what's received. I mean, potentially as sort of an area for additional information would be more on forward-looking plans. I'm thinking about sort of the information that is put out in the press report, which has been super valuable. So that's just focusing a little bit more on the pragmatic side.
Thank you very much, Andrea, also for this very practical hands-on suggestion. Greatly appreciated. Last but not least, Diva, one or two things for the Clearinghouse next steps.
Thanks, Johannes. I would echo the need to sort of, highlight use cases and demonstration models in a platform for specific examples in areas such as gender, but also just giving this platform for peer-to-peer exchange for NSOs to learn from each other, given that there really isn't enough of a community internationally for NSOs. And so this would be a valuable addition.
Wonderful. So this is perfect in time. I think, Shaida, we are really doing very well. So we have still good time to listen to Thomas. But Shaida, do you want to just wrap this segment up and then introduce Thomas?
Yes, thank you, Johannes, and thank you to really rich comments and suggestions from everyone. All those points were spot on, including the approach for taking a pragmatic approach for sustainability, balancing things, and really, but advancing the conversations that, as Anzi was saying, optimizing scarce resources, as Dominic was saying. And I loved all the emphasis that many of you put on issues like gender, some of the areas that we really need to team up and increase attention for greater and better financing for data. So it's been super rich. So now it's time for us to do the concluding remarks and the way forward. And for that, no one better than Thomas Gass who can do it for us. Thomas has been really a champion for this initiative from I would say day one or maybe day zero, has been a champion for this. Is really a force behind many times where some of us were just kind of losing the energy of thinking and talking about financing and the research work and the costing. Thomas has always come back to us and brought that energy and that enthusiasm and the wisdom of the guidance for what are the practical steps we could take. So Thomas, with that introduction, everybody knows you, but Thomas is the Assistant Director General of the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. So over to you, Thomas, for concluding remarks.
Thank you so much, Shaida, and it's really kind of you. And maybe I should just say, you know, this enthusiasm and this energy that you're talking about, actually, I get it when I see these two worlds meeting together, the world of statistics and the world of development cooperation. We had that very much in the high-level panel on the data revolution. Some of you were associated with that, but we also had that last July in New York when we met one morning and we kind of set out some of the expectations that we have, that we want to fulfill prior to the World Data Forum that was to be held here in October 2020 in Bern, and which we, as was said, now we have 1 year more to, let's say, do our homework. So let's do our homework, let's get to it. And as I said, I'm really always very, very energized when I see the experiences on the one hand, the very concrete experiences from the statistical colleagues that know what it takes and the kind of rigor that you need to have good statistical systems. And on the other hand, those colleagues, and I guess I'm maybe more of that part, who have actually seen how development cooperation can either miss its mark or tread in the dark because we don't really know what data we have, or even, and that is not good either, and maybe some of the colleagues who are also in development agencies will agree with me, we tend in our bilateral development cooperation, we tend to build our own data systems for our own hierarchies and accumulate masses of data that never really get connected and never really accrue to the national systems. And so last July in that breakfast meeting where many of you or some of the representatives of your organizations were, we came up with these 5 the deliverables that you, Shaida, mentioned earlier on: the domestic resources, the funding, the efficiency, the strength in cooperation, collaboration, and the sectoral funding. But I really want to underscore what Minister Ayush said. You know, in the end, all this only makes sense because we have a shared vision. We have the 2030 agenda that we want to achieve, and we know how critical data is, and good data and disaggregated data is, to be able to live up to the promises of the Agenda 2030 in 3 points, which I will always make, and I made them already during the last World Data Forum. I will make them again. I think that our data systems have to help us make the vulnerable visible. Mark Banzet said it just now, and to me that is really critical. Otherwise, leaving no one behind is just a dead promise, is an empty promise. The second point that we have to do is we have to make visible, and this hurts sometimes for some of us, we have to make visible how certain development trajectories actually tend to externalize negative impacts, either into other sectors or into other countries, which is even worse. And that is one which is very sensitive, but our data systems have to deliver on that. And the third point that our data systems have to deliver on, they have to, and I'm so glad Anzi Hassanali also said that, our data systems have to strengthen the accountability of the duty bearers of the states to the people. If that doesn't happen, the 2030 agenda will not become a social contract between the states and their people, and it will not happen. So this is the deliverables, and that's why data is so important. And I'm so grateful to Ure, Yada, and Johannes, and the whole team, yourself, for putting up this concept and this mock-up of what the clearinghouse mechanism could be. I think, as Andrea reminded us, it's not the silver bullet, it's not the solution to everything, but it's going to be one of the instruments that is going to help us, remind us, and I hope help us to think out of the box. And I really want to invite you in closing to co-create this clearinghouse mechanism. It has to be your clearinghouse mechanism, otherwise it's useless. And so please tell us what you want in that. Give us good examples of ideas, how you have connected needs and resources, how you have been able to make sure that projects, I'm thinking also of what Mark said about connecting gender with gender projects with the statistical community. We have to do that in all our projects. Make sure that we feed data into the system and that the system provides data for social accountability of the states to its people. So thank you all for participating, and it's been really great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Thomas. So the word we walk away from this session is really co-creation, because it looks like we are going ahead and we just need to really hold hands and co-create this product together. Thank you on my behalf from all of the speakers, and I'm going to hand it over to Johannes for the concluding remarks.
Well, thank you so much. I think it's very difficult to conclude after the concluding remarks from Thomas, because he said it all so eloquently. So I will refrain from this with your permission. No, I mean, it's just been amazing. I mean, I'm just looking at the time. We are just only 1 minute over the time. You have been an amazing panelist, I have to say. We have to we have to focus you very hard, but you did a very, very good job. So you can be all congratulated. I think we learned from very different perspectives from our two keynote speakers. Thank you so much from all the panelists and for engaging. I also would like to thank all the people who listened in. We got very good questions that we took good note of, and we will revert to them and we will reflect upon them through the different chat box. So unfortunately, it wasn't really possible to really engage into a conversation with our audience whom we can't even see. But the good news is we will be able to see us next year, next October, in real, hopefully in Bern. And with this, let me also thank the team behind. Again, the team behind we can't see is Jurai, of course, who is masterminded this all. But then many of my colleagues behind the scenes, Sasha, Caroline, Susan, Open Data Watch colleagues, and many others who made this possible. So thank you again to all of you for taking the time. A wonderful rest of the World Data Forum. Please join all for the concluding session. I believe George will be speaking and will make a good reference, and Ola as well, to this important session. I think you got a couple of good ideas for your speaking notes in the concluding session. And with this, I mean, let me thank you once again. Stay in touch, and we will be sharing further information as we go along, and have a wonderful rest of the day. With this, thank you very much. The session is adjourned. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
See you at the closing. Bye.